The stars looked different through the observation window of the horizon's edge. Captain Jiho. Kim stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the strange new region of space they had just entered. After 3 months of faster-than-light travel, humanity's first deep space exploration vessel had finally reached the galactic rim. Everything seemed quiet and peaceful. "Sir, we're detecting something," Lieutenant Minho Park called out from the tactical station. His voice carried a note of concern that made Jiho turn around quickly. "What is it?" "Multiple contacts? They just appeared on our sensors. At least 20 ships, and they're big. Much bigger than anything we've ever built." Jiho felt his stomach tighten. They had hoped to find other intelligent life out here, but not like this. Not so many ships at once. He walked over to Minho's station and looked at the display. The incoming vessels were massive, each one at least 5 times the size of the horizon's edge. "Communications. Try to establish contact," Jiho ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Let them know we come in peace." Engineer Suji Choi looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. "Captain, their energy readings are off the charts. Whatever technology they're using, it's way beyond ours." The main view screen flickered to life without anyone on the human crew activating it. A face appeared, alien and intimidating. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, skin that looked like polished stone, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the ship's computer struggled to translate the language. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered Korath Dominion space without authorization. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Jiho stepped forward, keeping his voice calm and diplomatic. "This is Captain Jiho Kim of the human exploration vessel Horizon's Edge. We meant no intrusion. We didn't know this space was claimed. We were explorers from Earth, and this is our first journey beyond our home system." The aliens for eyes seemed to study him with something between curiosity and contempt. "Humans. We have no record of your species in our database. You will surrender your vessel for inspection. Your primitive technology will be cataloged, and you will be escorted to Administrator Velness for processing." "Processing?" Minho whispered. "I don't like the sound of that." Jiho raised his hand slightly, signaling for silence. "We request the opportunity for peaceful dialogue. Perhaps we can establish diplomatic relations between our peoples." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Diplomacy is for civilized species who understand galactic law. You are trespassers and primitives. Consider yourselves fortunate that we don't simply vaporize your ship. You have 10 minutes to comply." The screen went dark. The bridge of the horizon's edge fell silent. Everyone looked at their captain, waiting for orders. Jiho knew they had no real choice. The sensor readings made it clear that even one of those alien ships could destroy them easily. "Stand down weapons," Jiho said quietly. "Prepare for boarding, but keep all our data encrypted and secure. They don't get access to Earth's location or our navigation logs without a fight." Suji worked quickly at her console. "I'm creating multiple layers of encryption on our core systems. If they want our data, they'll have to work for it." The next few hours were tense and humiliating. The Korath boarding party treated the human crew like children, examining their equipment with obvious disdain. The aliens were efficient and cold, cataloging everything on the ship while armed guards kept watch. One of the Korath engineers actually laughed when he saw the human FTL drive, making comments in his own language that the translation software couldn't quite interpret but sounded mocking. Eventually, the Horizon's Edge was escorted by the alien fleet to a massive station that hung in space like a dark metal city. The structure was enormous, easily 100 times larger than any space station humanity had ever constructed. Ships of various designs came and went from hundreds of docking bays. Jiho realized with growing dread that they had stumbled into something far larger than they could have imagined. Administrator Velness turned out to be even more imposing than the ship.
"Captain."
The alien was tall, at least 8 feet, with the same stone-like skin, but covered in what appeared to be ceremonial armor. He sat on a raised platform in a massive chamber, while Jiho and his senior officers stood below like defendants in a courtroom. So these are the humans, Velna said, his voice echoing through the chamber. A species so backwards they don't even know they've entered claimed territory. How many worlds do you control? Just one, Jeho answered honestly. Earth. We've recently colonized Mars and have stations around several moons, but Earth is our homeworld. Several Koreth in the chamber made sounds of amusement. Velnus leaned forward. One world. You have one world, and you thought you were ready to explore the galaxy. Do you have any idea how pathetic that sounds? Minho's jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. Jeho kept his expression neutral, refusing to show the anger and fear he felt inside. We are a young species, Jeho said, but we're eager to learn and grow. We wish only to establish peaceful contact and understanding. Velnus stood up, his armor clinking with the movement. Here's what will happen. You will return to your single planet and inform your leaders that the Korath Dominion now claims all space within 50 light-years of your star system. You will submit to vassal status under our empire. You will provide us with all your technological data and historical records. You will accept our administrators to govern your integration into galactic civilization. You will limit your population growth and industrial expansion according to our guidelines. And you will pay annual tribute to the Dominion for the privilege of our protection. And if we refuse, the words came out before Jeho could stop them. The chamber fell silent. Velnus smiled, showing all his sharp teeth. Then you will be eliminated as a potential threat. We have exterminated 37 species in the last 5,000 years for refusing to accept proper galactic order. Your choice is simple. Submit or die. You have 3 of your Earth months to decide. Now leave my sight. The trip back to Earth felt longer than the journey out. The crew of the Horizon's Edge barely spoke, each lost in their own thoughts. They had set out to discover wonders among the stars. Instead, they had found an empire that viewed humanity as insects to be controlled or crushed. Jeho stood alone in his quarters, looking at the star charts on his display. Somewhere out there was Earth, home to 8 billion people who had no idea what was coming. He had to warn them. He had to prepare them. But how do you prepare for something like this? When the Horizon's Edge finally entered Earth's solar system, every news agency on the planet was waiting. The first contact with alien life should have been humanity's greatest moment. Instead, Jeho had to tell his species that they were already conquered. They just didn't know it yet. The emergency session of Earth's United Coalition lasted for 16 hours straight. Representatives from every nation crowded into the massive assembly hall in Geneva. All of them demanding answers, all of them afraid. Captain Jeho Kim stood at the central podium, exhausted from repeating the same terrible story over and over. Ambassador Hyun Lee was the first to propose the obvious solution. She was a veteran diplomat, known for her calm approach to crisis situations. We must accept their terms, she said firmly. We have no choice. One species, one planet, against a galaxy-spanning empire? The mathematics alone tell us that resistance is suicide. General Doyon Shin slammed his fist on the table. The military commander had spent his entire career preparing Earth's defenses. And now, all his preparations seemed worthless. So we just surrender? We give up our freedom without even trying to fight back. What kind of message does that send? It sends the message that we're intelligent enough to recognize when we're outmatched. Heen replied sharply. Fighting an empire that controls thousands of worlds with our single planet would be like a child fighting a tank. It's not bravery, it's stupidity. Scientist Yunahan raised her hand, waiting for permission to speak. She was young for someone in her position, barely 30 years old. She had led the team that developed Earth's FTL drive. There might be a third option, she said quietly. We stall. We appear to negotiate in good faith while we desperately try to close the technological gap. Close the gap? Another delegate laughed bitterly. You saw the reports? Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Maybe thousands of years. How do we close that gap in 3 months? We can't, Yuna admitted. But maybe we can make ourselves too costly to simply crush. If we can develop even a few weapons or defenses that give them pause, we might earn genuine negotiations instead of simple surrender. The debate raged on for hours, but no consensus emerged. Eventually, the coalition voted to send a diplomatic mission to the neutral station that Captain Jiho had mentioned in his reports. A place called Chorus Point, where different species met for trade and communication. Meanwhile, Una would get her research team to study the limited sensor data they had collected from the Unisary. 3 weeks later, Jiho found himself back in space, leading a small diplomatic vessel toward Chorus Point. Ambassador Han was with him, along with Lieutenant Minho Park and a young pilot named Giwan Kong. The station was like nothing they had ever seen. A massive sphere of metal and light that housed thousands of beings from dozens of different species. Their first visit to the Galactic Council chamber was humbling and terrifying. The humans sat in a small section marked for observers, watching as representatives from various species debated trade agreements and territorial disputes. What struck Jiho most was how the smaller species were treated. When a representative from a species called the Tekket tried to complain about Dominion mining operations on their moon, the Quereth delegate simply talked over them until they sat down in defeat. "This is how they maintain order," Hyun whispered to Jiho, "through hierarchy and intimidation. The strong speak, the weak listen." After the session, Jiho approached the Tekket representative, a small amphibious being with large eyes and delicate features. The creature introduced herself as Pyrrha and agreed to speak with the humans in private. "You're new here," Pyrrha said, her voice sad and knowing. "I can tell because you still have hope in your eyes. That will fade soon enough." "How long has your species been under Dominion control?" Jiho asked. 312 years. "We resisted at first. We thought our ocean worlds would be too difficult for them to conquer fully. We were wrong. They bombed 3 of our cities from orbit, killed 15 million of my people in one day, and we surrendered immediately after that." Jiwan looked horrified. "They murdered 15 million people as a warning." "That's not murder to them," Pyrrha explained. "That's policy. That's how the Dominion has maintained power for over 10,000 years. They make examples. They show overwhelming force. And they never, ever negotiate with species they consider inferior. So what do we do?" Hyun asked desperately. "Just accept slavery?" Pyrrha was quiet for a long moment. "Most species do. It's the only way to survive. But some choose a different path. There are whispers of resistance, of species who fight in the shadows. I cannot tell you more here. The Dominion has spies everywhere." While Jiho gathered intelligence at Chorus Point, Minho had volunteered for a dangerous mission back in the solar system. General Doyon had authorized a covert operation to steal Dominion technology from one of their outlying research stations. It was a small facility, lightly guarded, studying the mineral composition of asteroids in a nearby system. The operation went better than anyone expected. Minho led a team of special forces and modified stealth ships, avoiding the station's sensors and boarding it during a shift change. They downloaded everything they could from the facility's computers and escaped with several pieces of equipment before the alarm was even raised. But what they found in that data was worse than anyone imagined. Eunice stayed up for 3 days straight, examining the stolen files with growing horror. When she finally called an emergency meeting with General Doyon and the coalition leadership, her hands were shaking. "They've done this before," she said, her voice hollow. "Not just once. Not just a few times. 63 species. That's how many intelligent civilizations the Quereth Dominion has completely exterminated in their history. 63 species that chose to resist rather than submit." She brought up images on the main display. Dead worlds. Ruined cities. Entire planets turned to radioactive glass. They don't just defeat resistance. They erase it. They destroy every city, every settlement, every trace that the species existed. Then they catalog what happened and file it away as a warning to others. The room fell silent. General Doyon looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. How many of those species had multiple planets? Advanced technology? 15, Una said. 15 species that controlled multiple star systems, that had technology comparable to or better than the Dominion's. And the Dominion still destroyed them all. Because they had time, resources, and absolutely no mercy. Ambassador Hyun stood up slowly. then we have no choice. We must accept vassal status. At least our species will survive. Will we? Minho challenged. Pyrrha said her people have been under Dominion control for 3 centuries. Do they still have their culture? Their identity? Or are they slowly being absorbed into the Empire until nothing of the original Tekket remains? Better absorbed than extinct, Hian shot back. General Doyan raised his hand for silence. The coalition is fracturing. China wants to fight. The European Union wants to negotiate. Africa is split down the middle. South America is demanding we surrender immediately. North America can't decide. We're running out of time, and we can't even agree on what to do with the time we have left. Back at Chorus Point, Jiho received an encrypted message on a private channel. The message was simple. Meet me in Docking Bay 47. Come alone if you want to learn about those who resist. It was signed with a symbol he didn't recognize. Against his better judgment, Jiho went. The docking bay was dark and mostly empty, with only a few small ships docked there. A figure emerged from the shadows, humanoid but clearly not human. The being was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. My name is Kelron, the figure said. I used to be an officer in the Vesson Compact. Now I'm something between a smuggler and a freedom fighter. Your species is in terrible danger, human. But there might be a way to survive. Are you willing to do whatever it takes? Jiho thought about Earth, about the billions of people who trusted their leaders to protect them. He thought about the Tekket, beaten down after 3 centuries of submission. He thought about the 63 extinct species, whose only crime was wanting to be free. Yes, Jiho said. Tell me what I need to know. Kelron smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. Then follow me. There are people you need to meet. People who still believe the Dominion can be resisted. But I warn you now, the path ahead will cost you more than you can imagine. Many will die. Your planet might burn. Are you still certain? Jiho hesitated for only a moment. I'm certain. As he followed Kelron deeper into the shadows of Chorus Point, he wondered if he had just saved humanity or doomed it. The answer, he suspected, wouldn't be clear until it was far too late to change course. Kelron led Captain Jiho through a series of maintenance tunnels beneath Chorus Point. The passages were narrow and dimly lit, clearly not meant for regular traffic. They walked in silence for nearly 20 minutes before reaching a hidden doorway that looked like part of the wall. Kelron pressed his hand against a specific panel. The door slid open with barely a sound. Inside was a small room filled with beings from at least 6 different species. They all turned to look at Jiho with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. One of them, a creature that looked like it was made of living crystal, spoke in a language the translator struggled with. This is the human? The one from the species that just wandered into Dominion space like tourists? Show respect, Kelron said sharply. Their innocence might be exactly what we need. The Dominion has no intelligence on humans. No psychological profiles. No tactical assessments. That makes them unpredictable. A female being with dark blue skin and 4 arms stood up. Her voice was strong and clear. I am Tasha. I speak for the remnant network in this sector. We are what remains of species who refuse to fully submit to the Dominion. We operate in the shadows, conducting sabotage, spreading information, and helping others escape when we can. How many of you are there? Jiho asked. Across the galaxy? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. We don't know for certain. We keep ourselves separate for security. But we're not an army. We're barely a resistance. The Dominion is too vast, too powerful. The best we can do is slow them down and make them pay a price for their tyranny. Keho felt a mixture of hope and despair. These beings were brave, but they were also clearly desperate. You said you want to help humanity? Why? What do you gain? Tasha exchanged glances with the others. Because every species that falls under complete Dominion control is one less potential ally. And because your species appearing out of nowhere might be the opportunity we've been waiting for. The Dominion thinks they know everything about the galaxy. Your existence proves they don't. That uncertainty could be valuable. Over the next few hours, Jiho learned about the true scope of the Dominion's power and the remnant networks struggle against it. The Empire controlled over 4,000 inhabited worlds and had tributary relationships with another 1,000 species. Their military was vast, their intelligence network even more so. They maintained power through three simple principles: overwhelming force, consistent surveillance, and brutal punishment for resistance. But they have a weakness, Calvin explained. They're complacent. The Dominion hasn't faced a real war in over 5,000 years. Every conflict in that time has been one-sided: suppression of rebellions or absorption of primitive species. Their officers have no experience with adaptive enemies. Their soldiers follow doctrine perfectly, but they don't know how to improvise. Jiho felt a spark of something he hadn't felt since encountering the Quareth: actual hope. You're saying we could use asymmetric warfare? Hit-and-run tactics. Guerrilla fighting. In space, Tasha confirmed. But it's incredibly dangerous. If the Dominion catches you, they won't just defeat you. They'll make an example that will echo across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. Back on Earth, Yuna was making her own discoveries. The stolen Dominion technology had given her team a treasure trove of information. While the aliens' weapons and shields were far superior to anything humanity possessed, their systems were highly standardized. Every ship used the same basic design. Every weapon operated on the same principles. It's like they stopped innovating centuries ago, Yuna explained to General Doyun during a secure video call. They found a system that works and just kept using it. Which means if we can find a weakness in one ship, that weakness exists in all their ships. Have you found a weakness? Doyen asked. Maybe. Their shields are incredibly strong against direct energy weapons and kinetic impacts. But they're not designed to handle multiple simultaneous strikes from different vectors. And their sensors have a blind spot during FTL transitions. It's only a few seconds, but if we time it right, we could hit them before they even know we're there. Doyen leaned forward. Could we actually fight them? Yuna hesitated. In a straight battle? No, they'd still crush us. But in hit-and-run attacks, targeting specific ships, and then escaping before they can respond? Maybe, if we're smart, if we're lucky, and if we're willing to accept that a lot of our people are going to die. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Minho had been given command of a special operations unit. General Doyan was secretly preparing for war, even as Ambassador Hoyan continued public negotiations with the Dominion. Minho's orders were simple: train every combat pilot and ship captain in irregular warfare tactics. Prepare for a fight that humanity couldn't win but might survive. Minho threw himself into the work. He studied every historical example of asymmetric warfare he could find: Vietnam, Afghanistan, the American Revolution. He looked for patterns, for tactics that had allowed weaker forces to resist stronger ones. Then, he adapted those tactics for space combat. Forget formation flying, he told his pilots during training exercises. Forget traditional naval doctrine. We're not trying to hold territory or win decisive battles. We're trying to make ourselves too expensive to crush. Every ship they send against us needs to be a risk. Every engagement needs to cost them more than they're willing to pay. At Chorus Point, Jiho met with the leadership of the Remnant Network. The meeting took place in an abandoned cargo container floating in space near the station. Security was so tight that everyone was searched 3 times. Before being allowed in, the leader of the network was known only as the Watcher. The being was wrapped in environmental suits and robes, making it impossible to tell what species they belonged to. When the Watcher spoke, the voice was electronically altered. Captain Jiho of Earth, your species faces extinction. The Quareth Dominion has sent you terms, and those terms are non-negotiable from their perspective. You will submit, or you will die. There is no third option in their minds. But there is in yours, Jiho said. The network has a plan. Operation Cascade. We've been preparing it for decades, waiting for the right moment. The plan involves coordinated strikes against Dominion infrastructure across 3 sectors simultaneously: supply depots, communication relays, research stations. Nothing that would justify a massive military response, but enough to hurt them and show that they're vulnerable. The Watcher turned to face Jiho directly. We need your species to be the distraction. The Dominion is watching Earth closely now. If human ships attack their forces, they'll focus all their attention on you. While they're distracted, the network strikes everywhere else. If it works, we prove the Empire can bleed. If it fails, humanity takes the blame and the punishment. You want us to be bait, Jiho said flatly. I want you to be the spark that starts a fire across the galaxy. The Dominion has ruled through fear for 10,000 years. They've convinced everyone that resistance is hopeless. But if a brand new species, one they considered primitive and helpless, can strike back successfully, that changes everything. Jiho thought about the choice carefully. It was exactly the kind of decision that he had no authority to make alone. This should be decided by Earth's leaders, by elected representatives, by the billions of people whose lives would be affected, but there was no time for that. The Dominion's deadline was less than 2 weeks away. By the time he could return to Earth, explain the situation, and get authorization, the opportunity would be gone. Engineer Suji and Lieutenant Borum-song had accompanied Jiho to this meeting. He looked at both of them now. Opinions? Borum spoke first. She was a tactical analyst, known for her careful, methodical thinking. It's a trap. Even if the operation succeeds, humanity becomes the focus of the Dominion's anger. We could win the battle and still lose everything. Suji disagreed. We're going to lose everything anyway if we do nothing. At least this way we go down fighting. And maybe, just maybe, we inspire others to fight too. Jiho made his decision. We're in, but I need your help getting weapons and intelligence. And I need a way to communicate with Earth without the Dominion intercepting. The Watcher made a sound that might have been approval. You'll have what you need. The network has been preparing for this for a long time. But understand this, Captain. Once you commit to this path, there's no going back. The Dominion doesn't forgive. They don't forget. Your species will be at war whether you want to be or not. Then we'd better make sure we hurt them enough to make the war worth it, Jiho replied. Over the next week, Jiho and his crew learned the details of Operation Cascade. The network provided them with intelligence on Dominion ship movements, weak points in their sensor coverage, and vulnerable targets. They also gave the humans experimental weapons that had been smuggled from various resistance cells across the galaxy. Back on Earth, Jiho sent an encrypted message to General Doyon, explaining the situation. He expected to be ordered home. He expected to be court-martialed for even considering such a dangerous plan without authorization. Jiho stood on the bridge of his ship, looking at the star charts that showed Dominion territory. In a few days, humanity would attack an empire that controlled thousands of worlds. They would do it with a handful of ships and weapons they barely understood. The Dominion's deadline arrived on a Tuesday. Earth's official response, carefully crafted by Ambassador Hyun and her diplomatic team, was a masterpiece of bureaucratic language. It accepted continued dialogue regarding integration frameworks without actually agreeing to anything specific. The message bought humanity another 3 weeks at most. Hi, Commander. Thexus of the Quareth Dominion read the human response with 4 eyes that gleamed with irritation. He had dealt with resistant species before. They always did this, trying to delay the inevitable with clever words and false negotiations. He issued orders to begin positioning his fleet for a punitive strike against human colonies on Mars and the outer moons. A small demonstration would clarify the situation, but Thexus never got the chance to carry out those orders. Operation Cascade began at exactly 400 hours Galactic Standard Time. Across 3 sectors of Dominion space, resistance cells struck simultaneously. On the industrial world of Paraxis, saboteurs destroyed a fusion reactor that powered half the planet's shipyards. Near the Veil Nebula, an automated supply station exploded, scattering vital materials into space. Communication relays went dark. Sensor platforms stopped transmitting, and in the middle of all this chaos, humanity struck its first blow. Captain Jiho commanded a small fleet of 7 ships, every combat-capable vessel Earth could spare for the operation. They had positioned themselves in a debris field near a Dominion supply route, using the asteroid fragments to hide their thermal signatures. Yuna's new countermeasures dampened their electronic emissions to nearly nothing. Contact Lieutenant Minho reported from his position on the tactical display. Convoy of 6 Dominion freighters with 3 destroyer escorts. Right on schedule, just like the network's intelligence said. Jiho felt his heart pounding. In a few moments, humanity would either prove they could fight back or prove they were fools. All ships, prepare for attack. Run. Remember the training. Hit hard, hit fast, and get out before they can coordinate a response. The human ships erupted from the debris field at maximum acceleration. They had modified their drives based on stolen Dominion technology, gaining precious seconds of surprise. The first missiles struck the lead destroyer before its shields even finished powering up. The Korath ship staggered, its armor cracking under the unexpected assault. They're not adapting. Minho shouted with something like joy in his voice. They're following their standard defensive protocol. They're predictable. The human fleet split into 2 groups, attacking from different angles, just as they'd practiced hundreds of times. The Dominion escorts were powerful, but they were designed to fight enemies who engaged them directly. The human ships danced around them, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. Pilot Jiwan flew her fighter with desperate courage, drawing fire away from the larger human vessels. Her ship was hit twice, shields failing, but she kept flying. She had to. If she stopped, if she hesitated, people died. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, all 3 Dominion destroyers were crippled or destroyed, and the freighters were drifting in space. The human fleet had lost 2 ships and taken heavy damage to 3 others. 47 humans had died. But they had won. GHO broadcast a message on all Dominion frequencies, knowing it would be heard across multiple star systems. This is Captain Jiho of Earth. We are not primitives. We are not helpless. We will not submit to slavery. Every ship you send against us will pay a price. Every attack on our people will be answered. Leave us alone, or learn to fear the species you thought was weak. The message spread through the galaxy faster than Jiho had expected. The remnant network ensured it reached every corner of known space. The Dominion had been struck. The Empire had bled. And the species who did it was one the Quarath had dismissed as irrelevant. Just months before, High Commander Thexus was furious. He sent immediate reports to the Dominion capital, demanding permission to mobilize a larger fleet. The response from the Emperor himself came within hours. Deal with the human problem permanently. Use whatever force is necessary. But while the Dominion was reacting to the human attack, the network's other operations were succeeding beyond anyone's expectations. The Tekket, inspired by humanity's courage, began their own subtle sabotage. Workers in Dominion factories made mistakes that ruined production. Computer systems mysteriously malfunctioned. The Empire's efficient machine started developing friction points. On Earth, the public learned what their military had done. The reaction was mixed. Some celebrated the victory. Others protested, terrified of what retaliation would come. Riots broke out in several major cities as people demanded answers. Why hadn't they been consulted? Why had their leaders chosen war? Ambassador Heian confronted General Doyon in a heated meeting that was recorded and later leaked. "You've doomed us all," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "You and Captain Jiho have signed Earth's death warrant. The Dominion will crush us now." Doyon met her anger with cold determination. "They were always going to crush us. We just decided to make it hurt. What about the innocent people who will die because of your decision? What about the children? The families? Do their lives mean nothing to you?" "They mean everything to me," Doyen replied quietly. "Which is why I'd rather see them die free than live as slaves. The Dominion was never going to let us keep our culture, our identity, our humanity." "You read the same reports I did? Every vassal species eventually gets absorbed, erased, made into just another part of the Empire. We're fighting for the right to exist as ourselves." But the cost of that fight was about to become terribly clear. The Tekket homeworld of Tekka. Prime had been under Dominion oversight for centuries, but the occupying force was small. The Tekket had been peaceful, compliant, giving the Quareth no reason to maintain a heavy military presence. When the Dominion discovered that Tekket workers had been involved in sabotage, they made a decision that would haunt the galaxy. Orbital bombardment lasted for 6 hours. The Dominion fleet targeted every major Tekket city, turning them into rubble and fire. They didn't invade. They didn't occupy. They simply destroyed. When it was over, 17 million Tekket were dead. The survivors were herded into refugee camps and told that any further resistance would result in the complete extermination of their species. Jiho watched the reports from Tekka Prime with horror and guilt. These people had helped humanity. They had believed in the possibility of resistance. And now, they were paying the price. "This is on us," he said to Suji, who stood beside him looking equally devastated. "They were inspired by what we did, and now they're dying for it."
I'll wait.
"No, this is on the Dominion. They chose to do this. They could have arrested the saboteurs. They could have increased security. Instead, they chose mass murder. That's not your fault. That's who they are." The destruction of Tekka Prime sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Some species recoiled in fear, pulling back from any hint of resistance. But others felt something different. Rage. How dare the Dominion do this? How long would the galaxy tolerate such tyranny? On Earth, the coalition government collapsed. Prime Minister Su-Yun was forced to resign as angry crowds demanded accountability. In the chaos, an emergency war council was formed with General Doyon as its head. The choice was made. If Earth was going to die, it would die fighting. Engineer Yuna worked around the clock, analyzing every scrap of data from the first engagement. She discovered something remarkable. The Dominion's military, for all its power, showed clear patterns of complacency. Their ships were strong, but their tactics were outdated. Their officers were well-trained, but they had no experience with adaptive enemies. "They haven't fought a real war in 5,000 years, she explained to the War Council. "Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming force against enemies who can't effectively fight back. But we can fight back. We're small, we're weak, but we can adapt faster than they can." Minho presented his own analysis. "The Dominion is mobilizing a major fleet to attack Earth. Intelligence from the network suggests at least 200 warships. We have maybe 30 combat-capable vessels. We can't stop them, and we don't try to stop them," Doyon said. "We delay them. We make them pay for every light year they travel. And while they're focused on us, we hurt them everywhere else." Back at Chorus Point, the Watcher contacted Jiho with urgent news. "The Dominion Emperor himself has taken notice. He's declared humanity an existential threat to galactic order. They're not going to just conquer you anymore. They're going to erase you. Every human colony, every space station, every trace of your species. They want to make you extinct." Jiho felt cold dread settle into his bones. "How long do we have?" "The extermination fleet will reach Earth in 6 weeks. Maybe 7 if you can slow them down." "I'm sorry, Captain. We knew this was a possibility, but I hoped they would be more cautious." "So did I," Jiho said quietly. He looked out at the stars, thinking about Earth, thinking about the billions of people who were going about their lives, unaware that their entire species had been marked for extinction. He thought about Jiwan, who had survived the first battle, but whose ship was barely functional. He thought about the Tekket, paying the price for humanity's rebellion, and he made a decision that would change everything. The plan was insane. Everyone who heard it said so. But insane was all humanity had left. Yuna presented her proposal to the War Council with steady hands despite the fear in her eyes. "We don't defend Earth. We take the fight to them. We strike at the Dominion's core territories, the places they consider completely secure. We make them pull forces back from the extermination fleet to defend their heartland." "That's suicide," one of the council members protested. "We'd have to penetrate deep into Dominion space, past their sensor networks, through their defensive lines. Our ships would be destroyed before we got anywhere near their core worlds." Maybe Yuna agreed. Or maybe they're so confident in their power that their core defenses are actually weaker than their border forces. When was the last time anyone attacked the Dominion capital region? 5,000 years ago? 10,000? Their best ships and most experienced crews are all on the frontier. The interior might be vulnerable. General Doyon studied the tactical displays. The plan had a certain desperate logic to it. We'd need intelligence on their core systems. Navigation data. Weak points in their sensor coverage. Kelrin had been listening via encrypted communication from Chorus Point. The Vesson Compact can provide that information. They've been mapping Dominion space for centuries, waiting for an opportunity to weaken their rivals. This is that opportunity. Why would they help us? Doyon asked suspiciously, because chaos in the Dominion benefits them. Because they're betting that you'll lose, but do enough damage to create opportunities for the Compact to expand. They don't care about humanity's survival. They care about profit and power. But their motivations don't matter if the intelligence is good. Over the next 2 weeks, humanity prepared for the most desperate operation in its history. Every combat-capable ship was retrofitted with the best weapons and systems they could manage. Crews trained in deep space navigation and combat tactics. Engineers worked until they collapsed, then got up and worked more. Captain Geo assembled his strike force, 23 ships, carrying a total of 4,000 crew members. It was the largest human fleet ever gathered, and it was still pathetically small compared to what they would face. He addressed the crews in a video message that was broadcast to every ship. We're going to attack the heart of an empire that has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Most military analysts say we have no chance. They're probably right. But we're not doing this because we think we'll win. We're doing this because we refuse to die quietly. We're doing this to show the galaxy that humanity will not surrender, will not submit, will not disappear without a fight. If we're going to end, we'll end like a supernova, not like a candle in the wind. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Minho remained behind to command Earth's defenses. He had 30 ships, barely enough to slow down the massive Dominion extermination fleet heading their way. But he had something the Dominion didn't expect: complete knowledge of Earth's solar system and a willingness to use every dirty trick in the book. We turned the system into a death trap. Minho explained to his officers. Mines hidden in asteroid fields, railgun platforms disguised as debris, nuclear weapons on slow-burn trajectories that look like natural comets. The Dominion expects to roll through and crush us. Instead, they're going to bleed. The human strike force departed Earth on a cold morning in March. They used a captured Dominion navigation beacon to access restricted space lanes, routes that the Empire considered secure from intrusion. For 3 weeks, they traveled through Dominion territory, avoiding patrols, hiding in nebulae, desperately racing toward their targets. Their first strike hit Quarix Prime, a heavily industrialized world that produced ships for the Dominion fleet. The humans attacked during a shift change, when the orbital shipyards were most vulnerable. They didn't try to destroy everything, just critical facilities. Manufacturing plants that made shield generators. Shipyards building capital vessels. Training academies where Dominion officers learned their trade. The attack lasted 40 minutes. When Jiho's force retreated, they left behind burning shipyards and shattered infrastructure. More importantly, they left behind confusion and fear. How had primitives from a single planet penetrated so deep into Dominion space? The next target was Thanox Station, a prestigious military academy orbiting a gas giant. Here, the Dominion trained its officer corps, the elite commanders who led fleets across the galaxy. The human attack was timed for graduation day. When the station was full of high-ranking officials and their families, Jiho made sure the attack destroyed facilities, not people. They targeted the docking bays, the communications arrays, the training simulators. The message was clear. The Dominion couldn't even protect its most prestigious institutions. Nowhere was safe. After each attack, Jiho broadcast the same message across all Dominion frequencies. We are humanity. We will not submit. We will not surrender. Leave our world alone, or watch your empire burn. The Dominion Emperor, safe in his ancient palace station above Valorum, watched the reports with growing rage. This was impossible. A species of primitives was making fools of his military. He ordered half the extermination fleet to return to core territories, to hunt down and destroy the human raiders. Back in the solar system, Minho's defensive force faced the reduced but still overwhelming Dominion fleet. 200 warships had been cut to 100, but that was still more than enough to destroy Earth. The battle began as the Dominion fleet entered the outer solar system. Minho's tactics were simple and brutal. He didn't try to fight fair. His ships hid behind planets and moons, using gravity to slingshot into attack runs. They deployed weapons that the Dominion considered primitive: nuclear mines, kinetic kill vehicles, chemical explosives. The tactics were ancient, but they worked. The Dominion lost 15 ships in the first engagement, shocked by the ferocity of the defense. They had expected the humans to surrender or flee. Instead, they found an enemy willing to ram damaged ships into their vessels, to detonate reactors as improvised bombs, to fight with a desperation that made them unpredictable and dangerous. Pilot G1, who had been given command of a fighter squadron for the defense, led a suicide run against a Dominion battlecruiser that was targeting Earth's orbital platforms. Her squadron damaged the ship's engines, but G1's fighter was hit by defensive fire. She could have ejected, but that would have meant leaving the battlecruiser operational instead. She aimed her crippled fighter at the enemy ship's reactor and fired her engines one last time. The explosion destroyed the battlecruiser and killed G1 instantly. Her sacrifice saved 3,000 people on the orbital platforms. She was 24 years old, as Earth's defense bled the Dominion fleet. Jiho's strike force prepared their final and most audacious attack. They were going to strike Valorum itself, the bureaucratic heart of the Empire, where the Emperor had ruled for over 2,000 years. Not to destroy it, they couldn't, but to send a message that nowhere was beyond humanity's reach. Engineer Suji had a different concern. "We've lost 9 ships, Captain. We're down to 14. Our ammunition is nearly gone. Our crews are exhausted. Even if this works, I don't know if we'll make it home." "Then we better make it count," Jiho replied. The attack on Valorum was less about causing damage and more about theater. The human fleet appeared in the system using routes that shouldn't have existed, navigation data that should have been impossible to obtain. They broadcast their message on every frequency, making sure the Emperor himself would hear it. "We offer peace," Jiho said, his voice steady and clear. "Humanity will withdraw from Dominion space. We will not expand beyond our current territory. We will maintain diplomatic isolation. In return, you will recognize our sovereignty and leave us alone. This is your opportunity to end a war that benefits neither of us." The Emperor's response came directly, his ancient voice filled with contempt. "You dare come to my home and demand terms? You will be hunted down. Your planet will be ash. Your species will be extinct." Perhaps Jiho acknowledged. "But how many of your worlds will burn before you accomplish that? How many other species will rise up when they see what we've done? You've ruled through fear for 10,000 years. We've shown the galaxy that fear has limits. You can kill us, Emperor. But the damage is already done." For several long minutes, silence filled the communication channels. Then, the Emperor spoke again. And this time, his voice carried something Jiho had never heard before. "Uncertainty. The same guarantee we have that you will honor them. None. But we're both paying a price for this war. You've lost ships, facilities, prestige. We've lost thousands of lives. We can continue until one of us is destroyed, or we can choose peace. Choose wisely, because the next time we meet, one of us won't walk away." The negotiations took 3 days. During that time, Minho's forces continued their desperate defense of Earth, holding the line even as their numbers dwindled. The Dominion fleet was down to 60 ships, but they were still pushing forward, still trying to reach Earth. Then suddenly the Dominion forces received orders to stand down. The Emperor had agreed to a ceasefire. Humanity would be recognized as a sovereign power, with protected space, limited to their current territory. In return, humans would not expand beyond their borders without Dominion approval.